So I want to get into something a little fun today, but along the way it might actually disappoint a few people, at least in the paranormal aspects. Um, so the terrain is always an interest of mine, knowing when certain bridges were built, things like that, when the pond became the pond, why it became the pond. We all know now that it was a quarry and it eventually filled in. So with some recent material that I came across, as well as this last visit we had with the Chris Fleming event on August 29th. Some people had some questions. I tend to avoid a lot of the drama as far as like the popular stories that get people out here, such as Al Capone dumping bodies or horse and plow drowning in the pond. So originally this is really going to be like, hey, when was the bridge built kind of thing? When was the road there? Blah, blah, blah. So I had to make some notes just so I don't screw up everything. I usually have everything in my head, but there's just so many maps. So the pond. Now, let's see what we got here. We got a whole bunch of maps. We got your basic Schmidt family map, the plat map when the Forest Preserve bought the property. That was around 1924, 1925 when it was created. So skipping some of the legal records, I'm just going on the maps when they were created so we can identify actually when the road next to the cemetery, not the old Midlothian Turnpike where the entrance is to the cemetery, but 143rd, when was that like road actually built? Because the Schmidt family had a barn on top of what would be considered today a part of 143rd, and then the Schmidt sold property to the Bohm family. This property was considered to them, I guess, not all that great because it wasn't great for farming, a lot of rock and stuff, but the Bohms sure as hell, started digging it, making a quarry out of it and selling the rock, so they made use of that. But, boy, we're going to be all over the place here. When I went to the Tinley Park Historical Society, actually I should back up, I did some FOIA requests, FOIA, Freedom of Information Act requests with the Highway Department, and sometimes they get back some cool stuff. Sometimes it's kind of like, did you look in the files for me or did you just get lazy? Because I wanted to know when, like the history of the bridge on 143rd by the pond, when was it first built? I've got maps that show me roads and no roads, but big determination would be that pond and that bridge. So the bridge, apparently the first one that we know of, based on some photographs from somebody, was it Tim Powers? Thank you, Tim. He donated some stuff to the Tinley Park Historical Society, and he made some notes, and he took pictures of the metal plaque. So the Highway Department, for some reason, didn't have this information or didn't want to give it up, whatever, I don't know. But it says 1931. So we know that at least minimum, probably the first bridge was 1931. And I say probably because you've got your creek. If you look at the bridge today, the bridge is only so many feet. Let's just say, I don't know, 20, 30 feet, whatever. But you can see on the maps when the Bohm property was purchased that the actual quarry extended past what would be the 143rd Street area. So if there was, for some weird reason, a bridge from the west side of the creek where the Bohm actually had their Bohm family had their house to the east side to where the Schmidt family had their barn, that's one hell of a bridge. Apparently there was no bridge there. The quarry drained north away from the cemetery. So unless they made a makeshift bridge to go down the quarry when they're working, that doesn't really serve a purpose for what we're looking for. We're looking for when was the first bridge built, right? But then on top of it, there's the original stories of the Al Capone dumping bodies in there, right? So when did these actual stories first start? That was one of the things I felt I really needed to dig into. Where did a lot of these ghost stories or rumors start? And speaking with Dale Kaczmarek, apparently the Al Capone stories first came about from Dale. Now you can download a book called True Tales of the Unknown, the Uninvited. Let's see here, from 1989, and Dale does mention that in the 1920s into the 1930s, that Al Capone was dumping bodies there. But if you look at the maps, let's take one from the USGS. Now, it was created in 1928, reprinted in 1933. The thing with USGS maps is that sometimes they compile multiple data sets. So sometimes they may indicate a road existing, but it really didn't. It's kind of weird. So we've got a USGS from 1926, which I'll go on, which was their edition from 1928. That one does not show the road, which should be more proper. So when the 1928 BOEM map, property map, was created, there should have been no road. So, and that is what the USGS is also showing in their 1928 edition from a data set of 1926. There's no road. So the original stories, like I say, came out from Dale Kaczmarek, real brief kind of blips. But as time goes on, people are like, well, the Al Capone, will drive his bodies out here, his dead bodies, on 143rd, and dump them into the pond. The problem is, in the 20s, until 143rd Street was built, there was not really much of a pond. It was still draining, right? And we know the pond is fairly shallow. So if there's any water collecting, maybe it was farthest towards the cemetery, but it's not even that deep. So what do we got here? Now it says, he says into the 30s. Okay, fine. By then, by 1931, yeah, there was a road there by then and stuff like that. But I don't mean to throw Dale under the bus, but I just go on, where the information's leading me. I had to ask him. I go, look, this is, it looks like, you started the stories. Where did it all stem from? I'm very curious. The only answer I really got was, well, it just sounded like something that would happen. Huh. Well, it sounds really bad, but maybe he meant well. Maybe he heard some stories. Whatever. Let's just try to get past that. So we know that, for the most part, Al Capone was not dumping bodies in the 20s off of that road. Stories would change over time when these little details kind of got out. Where they were like, oh, let's pause it with the plane. All right, so eventually, though, people started twisting their story, saying that it was the old Midlothian Turnpike. Al Capone would drive up next to the entrance of the cemetery, drag the bodies through the cemetery, and throw them in the pond. Okay. I mean, overall, we've got no evidence of Al Capone dumping bodies. There's really not much in the way of records of bodies in the pond, although there are some little things over time, more modern times compared to Al Capone, where they may have been fishing some stuff out, whatever. But anyway, we're just sticking with the Al Capone stuff. Now, you would think the Schmidt family, their property, got to talk to some of the ancestors, right? And I asked them, are there any stories handed down about Al Capone? Now, if you're starting to find bodies dumped in there, if that's what was happening, you would think those stories would stick. Nothing's coming out of the family except that the Al Capone's, goons asked to have part of their milk route, which made them nervous, and that's another story in itself. But you think, okay, that story lived on. What about dumping bodies? Nothing? Apparently nothing. So there's probably nothing to this Al Capone thing. There's a lot of holes in the story. It's not to bash Dale or anything like that. It's just that apparently this one is pretty much a myth, and I think it's getting busted. Now, the one that's definitely busted is the horse and plow story, where the horse gets startled, drags the farmer into the pond, and so on and so forth. That story did originate from Dale Kaczmarek as well. Man, it's getting sunny. And now, Dale mentions in his books that it happened in the 1870s. Well, they weren't even digging the quarry by then. So, now those records I wanted to get my hands on. I've seen them, but I needed to photocopy those. There was so much stuff I was photocopying that I figured I'd just get back to it. Some people did. The handwriting's really hard. But the bottom line is that it was a quarry. There were some court cases when the property was trying to be taken over by the Forest Preserve. And we pretty much got an idea of how long they were digging the quarry for in a remote period. So it did not, this couldn't have happened. Now Dale says that he remembers hearing the story, he remembers reading it or whatever, and he thinks it applies to that. Maybe it happened somewhere else, but it definitely doesn't apply to that. Apply to here of anything drowning in the pond, because there was no hole in the ground yet. So now let's get to these maps just so you can get a kind of a reference. There's things like they call like Section 8, Section 5, things like that. You'll see these lines in the maps. And they were pretty good when they made Plata survey maps when they bought the property. Now, the 143rd Street area, just think of going straight down the middle line of it, would be a good reference point in the maps where there's this dividing line between Section 5 and Section 8. So you can see where the quarry went past the road and it drained. Maybe I'll throw some photos in there. It's really hard to see. But today, if you actually go on the north side of the road, you'll see remnants of the original quarry drainage. Let's see here. You know, just these little things. So dig into it yourself, I guess. I'll throw in whatever with these pictures of the maps. But pretty much, it seems like we narrowed it down. Again, I want some more documentation, but it's a pretty good indication that no, there was no Al Capone stuff going on, and there definitely was no horse drowning. So I know these are popular stories. I know they got out and they just live on and live on and live on, but we need to address it, especially these airplanes. Stop flying over the Grove. Yeah. So yeah, these things do need to be addressed. Overall, I find it pretty fun because the pictures of the old bridge off to the left, you see this guardrail, and that's the original pull-off where people park by the pond. So there's a lot of cool stories about parking near the pond, and it's hard to get photos. I should have taken photos even back before they tore it down, but that's just the way it goes, you know. Anyway, enjoy these photos of the old bridge. Thank you, Tim. And hopefully those of you coming to the Grove and hearing these stories and they get you all excited, please don't be disappointed. There are some real weird things going on, even if this is fantastic for you and that's what draws you out there. And when you find out that there's no evidence for it, you know, just keep going. There's really there's true stuff, cool stuff. Have fun, enjoy.
Meet me at the Grove. Right!